Captain Sarah Chen stared at the massive alien ship through the viewport of the research station. The Cathara vessel stretched for kilometers, its silver hull gleaming against the black of space. 3 months ago, humanity had made first contact with this ancient race. 3 months ago, they had almost destroyed everything. The memory still burned in Sarah's mind. Earth's military had panicked when the Cathara ships appeared in the outer system. Without waiting for diplomatic contact, Admiral Morrison had ordered a preemptive strike. 50 nuclear missiles had screamed toward the alien fleet. The Cathara could have wiped out Earth in response. Their technology was centuries ahead of humanity's crude weapons. Instead, they had simply absorbed the nuclear blasts with their shields and sent a single message. We understand your fear. We forgive your aggression. May we talk? Now Sarah stood as Earth's primary diplomat, tasked with building a relationship that humanity had nearly destroyed before it began. The station's communication array crackled to life, and the melodic voice of Ambassador Velthara filled the room. Captain Chen, we are ready to begin today's cultural exchange. My people are eager to learn more about human art and literature. Sarah smiled despite her nervousness. The Cathara had shown incredible patience over the past weeks. They had shared basic technologies, helped humanity understand faster than light travel, and offered medical knowledge that could cure diseases that had plagued Earth for centuries. All they asked for in return was knowledge about human culture. Of course, Ambassador. I have prepared several pieces that I think your people will find interesting. The holographic display activated, showing Velthara's elegant form. The Cathara resembled tall, graceful beings with flowing features that seemed to shift like water. Their skin held a pearl-like quality that reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. We have been analyzing the music you shared yesterday, Velthara said, her voice filled with what Sarah had learned was excitement among her species. The emotional complexity is remarkable. How do humans create such intricate feelings in sound? Sarah launched into an explanation of human musical theory, but her mind kept wandering to the reports she had received that morning. Earth's governments were growing impatient. They wanted military technology, weapons, defensive systems. The Cathara had politely declined every request, saying they preferred to share knowledge that would help humanity grow rather than destroy. Captain, Velthara interrupted her thoughts. I sense distraction in your biometric patterns. Is something troubling you? Sarah hesitated. The Cathara could read human emotions through subtle technological means, making deception nearly impossible. My people are eager to receive more advanced technologies. Some feel that the cultural exchange is moving too slowly. Velthara's form shimmered with what Sarah recognized as sadness. We have observed this impatience in your species. It is one of the reasons we proceed carefully. Your people have great potential, but also great capacity for self-destruction. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from Earth. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on a private channel, his expression grim. Captain Chen, I need you to listen carefully. We've detected movement in the outer system. Unknown ships are approaching, and they're not Cathara. ETA is approximately 6 hours. Sarah's blood ran cold. How many ships, Admiral? 17 vessels, each larger than the Cathara flagship. Their energy signatures are completely different. We're trying to hail them, but they're not responding to any communication attempts. Velthara had clearly detected Sarah's distress. Captain, what has occurred? Sarah quickly explained the situation. The Cathara ambassador's reaction was immediate and alarming. Her usually calm features shifted into what could only be described as fear. This is most troubling news, Velthara said. Can you describe the energy signatures of these vessels? Sarah relayed the technical data that Admiral Morrison had provided. As she spoke, she noticed Velthara becoming increasingly agitated. Captain Chen, I must speak with my council immediately. These signatures match those of a species we had hoped never to encounter again. The Zarketh. Who are the Zarketh? Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. They are a species that believes might makes right. They conquered dozens of civilizations in this galaxy, before we managed to drive them back to the Outer Rim 3,000 years ago. If they have returned, it means they believe they have found weakness to exploit. Sarah felt her stomach drop. Are they coming for Earth? No, Captain. They are coming for us. The Cathara have always been their primary target, but your world now lies between their fleet and our homeworld. Humanity will be caught in the crossfire. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Earth had barely survived first contact with one alien species. Now they were about to be caught in the middle of an ancient galactic war. What can we do? Sarah asked. Velthera was quiet for a long moment. The Zarketh are numerous and their technology rivals our own. Our nearest fleet is weeks away. By the time they arrive, both Earth and our diplomatic mission will be destroyed. Sarah's mind raced. What about evacuation? Can you get your people to safety? We could flee, yes. Our ships are faster than theirs, but... Velthera paused, her form shimmering with internal conflict. If we abandon Earth, the Zarketh will use your world as a staging ground for their assault on our space. Millions of your people will suffer. The weight of the decision settled on Sarah's shoulders. Humanity had attacked the Cathara without provocation, nearly starting a war through paranoia and fear. Yet these beings were now considering risking their lives to protect Earth from an enemy that humanity couldn't even comprehend. Ambassador, Sarah said quietly, why would you risk your people for us? We tried to kill you when we first met. Velthara's response came without hesitation, because we see what your species could become. Yes, you attacked us out of fear, but you also had individuals ready to risk everything for peace. Your capacity for growth, for learning from mistakes, for choosing hope over fear. That is why we believe in humanity. Sarah stared out at the approaching alien fleet. Knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of two civilizations, the Cathara had forgiven humanity's aggression once. Now it was time to discover if that forgiveness had been worth the cost. The comm system chimed with an incoming message from the approaching Zarketh fleet. The translation came through in mechanical cold tones. Cathara vessels, you will surrender unconditionally or face complete annihilation. You have 1 hour to comply. The galaxy's fate hung in the balance, and Earth stood at the center of a storm they never could have imagined. Admiral Morrison paced the bridge of the UES Defiance, Earth's flagship that had been hastily positioned between the Cathara diplomatic vessel and the incoming Zarketh fleet. His officers watched the tactical display with growing dread as 17 massive alien warships closed the distance. Sir, the Zarketh fleet will reach weapons range in 37 minutes, reported Lieutenant Commander Park, his voice steady despite the impossible odds they faced. Morrison nodded grimly. Earth's combined fleet consisted of 12 ships, hastily retrofitted with the basic energy shields the Cathara had shared during their cultural exchange. Against 17 vessels, each dwarfing Earth's largest battleship, it would be like throwing stones at titans. On the secondary display, Ambassador Velthara's image flickered with distress. Admiral Morrison, I implore you to withdraw your forces. The Zarketh weapons will tear through your ships in seconds. There is no honor in meaningless sacrifice. With respect, Ambassador, those are my people down there, Morrison replied, gesturing toward Earth hanging blue and beautiful in space below them. We've made our share of mistakes, but we don't abandon our allies. Velthera's form shimmered with what Morrison had learned indicated emotional conflict among her species. Admiral, we have contacted our military command. A relief fleet is en route, but they are still 19 days away. The Zarketh will not wait. Captain Chen's voice crackled through the comm from the research station. Admiral, I'm reading massive energy buildups across the Zarketh fleet. I think they're preparing to attack. Morrison turned to his tactical officer. Commander Torres, what's our best assessment of their capabilities? Torres studied her instruments with professional calm. Based on the sensor data from the Cathara, each Zarketh ship carries enough firepower to glass a continent. Their shields appear to be comparable to Cathara technology, maybe slightly stronger. Our weapons, she paused. Sir, our nuclear arsenal might scratch their paint. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support and the steady beeping of sensors tracking the approaching doom. Morrison stared at the tactical display, his mind racing through impossible scenarios. Admiral? Came a new voice from the communication station. The Zarketh are hailing us. Put them through. The main screen filled with an image that would haunt human nightmares for generations. The Zarketh commander was a creature of crystalline armor and burning red eyes. Its form suggesting predatory efficiency, evolved over millions of years of conquest. Inferior species. The creature spoke in mechanical tones through the translation matrix. You will move your primitive vessels aside. Your interference in Zarketh justice is not tolerated. Comply, or join the Cathara in extinction. Morrison stepped forward, his jaw set with determination. "This is Admiral Morrison of the United Earth Fleet. You are in human space, threatening our allies. We will not stand aside." The Zarketh commander's eyes flared brighter. "Human, your species is unknown to us. You possess no technology of consequence, no military strength worthy of notice. Why do you choose death?" "Because some things are worth dying for," Morrison replied simply. The alien creature stared at him for a long moment before what might have been laughter escaped its translated voice. "Admirable stupidity, very well. You will die first, as an example to the Cathara of the cost of befriending inferior species." The transmission ended, leaving the human fleet alone with their impossible choice. "Sir," Torres reported, "I'm detecting weapons lock from the entire Zarketh fleet. They're targeting our ships first, then the Cathara vessel." Morrison looked around his bridge at the faces of men and women who had volunteered for this mission, knowing they would likely die. Each one met his gaze with quiet determination. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. In about 15 minutes, we're going to face an enemy we can't defeat with conventional tactics. But we're not here for a conventional victory. We're here to buy time, to make a statement and to show the galaxy what humanity stands for." He paused, watching Earth rotate slowly below. 3 months ago, we nearly started a war through fear and prejudice. Today, we have a chance to end one through courage and sacrifice. The Cathara forgave us when they had every right to destroy us. Now we have the opportunity to prove that their faith was not misplaced. Across the fleet, ship captains acknowledged their orders. On the research station, Captain Chen watched through tears as the human vessels formed a defensive line between Earth and the approaching storm. Ambassador Velthera's voice came through the comm, heavy with emotion. "Admiral, my people's history spans 50,000 years. In all that time, we have rarely encountered a species willing to sacrifice themselves for others they barely know. Your actions today will be remembered." "Let's hope someone survives to do the remembering," Morrison replied. The Zarketh fleet reached weapons range. Space erupted in brilliant beams of energy that turned the void into a light show of destruction and defiance. The first human ship, UES Courage, vanished in a flash of vaporized metal and plasma. But as it died, it fired every weapon it had at the Zarketh flagship. The nuclear missiles and energy weapons barely registered on the alien shields, but they sent a clear message. Humanity would not go quietly into extinction. The second ship, UES Determination, lasted 30 seconds longer. Its captain had diverted all power to shields and engines, ramming his vessel directly into a Zarketh cruiser. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the solar system. One by one, Earth's defenders fell, but each death was bought with blood and defiance. Each sacrifice planned to inflict maximum damage on the invaders. The Zarketh fleet, accustomed to easy victories over terrified civilizations, found themselves facing an enemy that fought harder as the odds grew worse. "Sir," Torres reported, her voice breaking as she watched another human ship die. "The Zarketh are taking damage. Not much, but they're actually slowing their advance to reassess." Morrison gripped his command chair as another explosion rocked his ship. "They've never fought crazy people before. The whole galaxy probably surrenders when they see those odds." Through the chaos, Velthera's voice came again. "Admiral, our ship's weapons are coming online. We are preparing to join your defense. Ambassador, your ship carries diplomats and scientists. You should evacuate while you can." "Admiral Morrison," Velthera replied, her voice filled with new resolve. "My people have watched your species for 3 months. We have seen your art, your music, your literature. But today we see your soul. We will not abandon you." The Cathara ship, elegant and powerful, moved alongside the remaining human vessels. Its advanced weapons began carving through Zarketh shields with deadly precision, proving that the galaxy's older civilizations still had teeth when they chose to use them. As Admiral Morrison watched the battle unfold around him, he realized that win or lose, this moment would define humanity's place in the galaxy forever. They had chosen to stand with their former enemies against impossible odds, not for conquest or glory, but for the simple principle that some things mattered more than survival. The real fight was just beginning. Commander Elena Vasquez gripped the controls of her interceptor as she weaved between the massive capital ships locked in deadly combat. The space around Earth had become a graveyard of twisted metal and plasma fires, but the battle was far from over. Her squadron, the last 12 fighters Earth had in reserve, screamed through the void toward the Zarketh flagship. The alien vessel was a kilometer-long nightmare of sharp angles and weapon ports, its surface scarred but still functional after absorbing the sacrifice of 3 human ships. Phoenix Squadron, this is actual, came Admiral Morrison's voice through the comm, strained but determined. The Cathara have identified a weakness in the flagship's shield matrix. You need to get inside their defensive perimeter and target the shield generators directly. Elena looked at her tactical display. The flagship was surrounded by a web of smaller Zarketh vessels, each one more than capable of swatting human fighters like insects. Copy that, Admiral. Phoenix Squadron, you heard the man. Time to thread the needle. Lieutenant Yamamoto's voice crackled through static. Commander, those shield generators are inside their point defense range. We'll be sitting ducks. Then we better be fast ducks, Elena replied, pushing her engines to maximum thrust. Remember, we're not trying to win this fight. We're trying to give the Cathara a clean shot. The fighters dove toward the enemy formation in a desperate charge that defied all tactical sense. Zarketh weapons lit up space around them, turning the void into a deadly maze of energy beams and explosive projectiles. 2 fighters vanished immediately, their pilots dying without time to scream. But the remaining 10 pressed on, their small size and human stubbornness allowing them to slip between the larger weapons targeting the capital ships. Elena watched her tactical display as the Cathara vessel maneuvered into position, its main weapons charging for a focused assault on the flagship. Phoenix 2 is hit. Yamamoto's voice came through heavy with pain. Engine failure, bleeding atmosphere. Switching to ramming course. Elena watched helplessly as Yamamoto's fighter, trailing fire and debris, slammed into a Zarketh point defense turret. The explosion was tiny compared to the massive ships around them, but it opened a gap in their defensive fire. There's our opening. All fighters, follow me in. The remaining 9 human fighters plunged through the gap, their weapons already firing at the exposed shield generators. The alien technology was incredibly resilient, but concentrated fire from human plasma cannons began to overload the power systems. Shields fluctuating on the flagship, came Torres' voice from the Defiance. Cathara vessel, you have a firing solution. The graceful alien ship unleashed its main weapons in a beam of pure energy that would have impressed the gods. The lance of destruction punched through the weakened shields and carved deep into the Zarketh flagship's hull. For a moment, Elena allowed herself to hope. Then the tactical display showed the truth. The flagship was damaged but not destroyed, and its return fire was already racing toward the Cathara vessel. Cathara ship is hit, Torres reported. Heavy damage to their engines and weapon systems. Ambassador Velthara's voice came through the comm, calm despite the chaos. Human vessels, our ship is crippled. We cannot evade the next attack pattern. You must withdraw to protect your homeworld. Admiral Morrison's response was immediate. Negative, Ambassador. We're not leaving you. Elena watched as the damaged human fleet repositioned themselves between the Zarketh forces and the crippled Cathara vessel. 5 human ships left against 12 alien warships. The math was brutal, but the intent was clear. Phoenix Squadron returned to formation. Elena ordered her remaining fighters. We're covering the retreat. What retreat? Asked Lieutenant Santos. Nobody's retreating. Elena smiled grimly as she watched the UES Defiance, its hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere, move directly into the path of the Zarketh flagship's main weapons. Then I guess we're all crazy. The battle entered its final phase with humanity's characteristic blend of tactical brilliance and absolute insanity. The UES Melbourne rammed a Zarketh cruiser at ramming speed, both ships dying in a fusion fire that temporarily blinded the sensors. The UES Tokyo used its dying reactor to overload the Zarketh weapons targeting the Cathara vessel, buying precious seconds with the lives of her crew. Each human ship fought like it was the last hope of civilization, because in many ways, it was. They had no reinforcements coming, no secret weapons to deploy, no miraculous technology to save them. All they had was the absolute refusal to let their allies face extinction alone. Commander Vasquez, came a new voice through the comm. It was Captain Chen from the research station. I'm reading massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the system. Something big is coming through hyperspace. Elena's heart sank. More Zarketh ships would end any hope of survival. But as the new contacts resolved on sensors, her tactical computer began displaying impossible readings. Phoenix Actual, this is Research Station Alpha. Those aren't Zarketh signatures. I'm reading. Oh my god, it's a Cathara battle fleet. 60 ships, All heavy cruisers or better. The comm system exploded with activity as Ambassador Velthara's voice cut through the chatter, filled with disbelief and hope. This cannot be possible. Our nearest fleet was 19 days away. A new voice answered, deep and resonant with authority. Ambassador Velthara, this is Fleet Commander Zethara. We received your distress call and pushed our engines beyond safe limits to reach you. The entire Kethara 5th Fleet volunteered for the emergency jump. Elena stared at her sensors as 60 massive alien warships dropped out of hyperspace and immediately opened fire on the Zarketh forces. The crystalline invaders, caught between the surviving human ships and a full Kethara battle fleet, suddenly found themselves outnumbered and outgunned. Fleet Commander, Admiral Morrison's voice came through the comm. This is Admiral Morrison of the United Earth Fleet. Thank you for coming. We weren't sure anyone would remember we were here. Zethara's response carried undertones that the translation software rendered as deep respect. Admiral Morrison, when word reached our homeworld that humans had chosen to fight alongside our diplomatic mission against impossible odds, our High Council declared an emergency session. In 50,000 years of Kethara history, no species has ever sacrificed themselves to protect our people without being asked. The Zarketh fleet, faced with overwhelming force and an enemy that fought with inexplicable determination, chose the better part of valor. Their flagship broadcast a general retreat order, and the surviving alien vessels began jumping to hyperspace. But Elena noticed something on her sensors that made her blood run cold. Admiral, the Zarketh flagship isn't retreating. It's charging weapons and heading straight for Earth. The damaged enemy vessel, its crystalline commander apparently choosing spite over survival, was on a collision course with humanity's homeworld. Even crippled, it carried enough firepower to devastate entire continents. Fleet Commander Zethara, Morrison said urgently. Can your ships intercept? Negative, Admiral. The flagship will reach your world's atmosphere before we can achieve weapons lock. Their final act will be genocide. Elena looked at her fuel gauge, at her weapons display, at the tactical computer calculating intercept courses. One human fighter against a kilometer-long alien warship. The math was laughably impossible. She thought about her daughter sleeping peacefully in Mexico City, about the billions of people who would die if the Zarketh succeeded in their final act of malice. She thought about the Kethara who had risked everything to save humanity from an enemy they couldn't even fight. Phoenix Squadron, Elena said quietly. This is actual. Form up on me. We're going to stop that ship. The 8 remaining human fighters fell into formation behind their commander, as they accelerated toward an enemy they couldn't possibly defeat. But sometimes, Elena reflected, the impossible was just another word for Tuesday when humanity was involved. Behind them, the Kethara fleet raced to catch up, their engines straining against the laws of physics. The final moments of the battle would determine whether humanity's sacrifice had bought them salvation, or merely delayed their extinction by a few precious minutes. Elena Vasquez pushed her interceptor beyond its design limits as Earth grew larger in her viewscreen. The Zarketh flagship, a dying giant trailing plasma and debris, was less than 3 minutes from atmospheric entry. Its weapons were still functional, its commander still determined to turn humanity's homeworld into a funeral pyre. Phoenix Squadron, spread formation. Elena ordered her 7 remaining pilots. Target their weapon systems. If we can't stop them, maybe we can blind them. The human fighters opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons and missile racks emptied themselves against the alien ship's armored hull. The attacks were like raindrops against a mountain, but they were causing damage to sensor arrays and point defense systems. Phoenix Actual, this is Phoenix 4, Lieutenant Santos reported. Their main cannon is still charging. Looks like they're targeting North America. Elena's jaw clenched. Her daughter lived in Mexico City. 200 million people were about to die because 8 human fighters weren't enough to stop a ship that should have been impossible for them to even scratch. Fleet. Commander Zethara, she called over the comm. How long until your ships can engage? The Kethara commander's voice carried frustration that transcended species. 97 seconds, Commander. We are pushing our engines to destruction, but physics cannot be bargained with. Elena stared at her tactical display. The flagship would reach firing position in 40 seconds. Even if the Kethara arrived exactly on time, it would be too late to prevent the devastation of Earth's most populated continent. Phoenix Squadron, new plan, Elena announced, her voice deadly calm. We're going to ram their main weapon, The comm channel erupted in protest from her pilots, but Elena continued. Look at the tactical analysis. Their main cannon has a focusing chamber right behind the primary emitter. 8 fighters ramming that chamber simultaneously might cause a containment failure. Might cause our deaths is more like it, Santos replied. We're already dead, Elena said simply. The question is whether we die uselessly or die saving 200 million people. Lieutenant Park's voice came through with the characteristic gallows humor of fighter pilots. Well, when you put it that way, Commander. Phoenix 2, ready for ramming speed. One by one, her pilots acknowledged the suicide run. Elena felt a surge of pride that almost overwhelmed her fear. These were Earth's children, facing the impossible with nothing but courage and the absolute refusal to let innocent people die. Admiral Morrison, Elena called to the Defiance. Tell my daughter I love her. Tell her that her mother died protecting the future. Morrison's voice came back heavy with emotion. Commander, there has to be another way. Sometimes there isn't, Admiral. Sometimes you just have to trust that the universe remembers who stood up when it mattered. The 8 fighters formed a perfect spearhead formation and accelerated toward the flagship's main weapon. The alien ship's point defense systems, damaged but still functional, filled space around them with deadly energy. Phoenix 6 vanished in a flash of vaporized metal. Phoenix 8 spun out of control, its pilot dead at the stick. But the remaining 6 fighters pressed on, their hulls glowing from atmospheric friction as they entered Earth's outer atmosphere alongside their target. The planet filled Elena's view screen, blue and beautiful and utterly defenseless. Weapons lock on the focusing chamber, Phoenix 3 reported. 20 seconds to impact. Elena watched the tactical display count down the seconds. 15. 10. 5. At the last moment, something impossible happened. The space around the Zarketh flagship suddenly filled with new contacts. Not Cathara ships, not human vessels, but something else entirely. Phoenix Actual, this is Research Station Alpha. Captain Chen's voice crackled through static. Elena, you need to pull up now. There are ships materializing right on top of the flagship. Elena yanked her controls hard left, her fighter screaming in protest as she pulled out of the ramming run. Around her, the other Phoenix pilots followed suit, their training overriding their death wish at the last possible second. The space around the Zarketh flagship suddenly swarmed with sleek, predatory ships that seemed to bend light around their hulls. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, and the alien flagship simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris field. One moment it was there, the next moment it was gone. What the hell just happened? Santos demanded over the comm. A new voice answered, speaking flawless English with an accent that sounded almost familiar. Phoenix Squadron, this is Captain Aria Reeves of the Terran Colonial Fleet. Sorry we're late to the party. Elena's mind reeled. Terran Colonial Fleet? That's impossible. Earth doesn't have colonies. Captain Reeves's laughter came through the comm, warm and distinctly human. Commander, we're not from your Earth. We're from an Earth about 300 years in your future. And we've been waiting a very long time for this moment. The tactical display showed more ships materializing around Earth. Hundreds of them. All clearly human in design but incorporating technologies that wouldn't be invented for centuries. They moved with precision that spoke of long experience, their crews working with the efficiency of a military that had faced and defeated every threat the galaxy could offer. Future humans? Admiral Morrison's voice carried disbelief and hope in equal measure. How is that possible? Time travel, Admiral, came another voice, this one female and carrying the authority of high command. Admiral Sarah Chen, Terran Temporal Defense Corps. I believe one of your officers is my great-great-grandmother. Elena felt her world shift as she recognized the name and the voice. Captain Chen from the research station? The very same, Commander Vasquez. Your great-great-granddaughter, as it turns out. The temporal mechanics are classified. But let's just say that your actions today created ripples that changed the entire course of galactic history. Fleet Commander Zethara's voice joined the conversation, filled with confusion. Admiral Chen, how are humans present in this time period? Our historical records show no evidence of time travel technology. Admiral Chen's response carried a note of pride that spanned generations. Commander Zethara, your people taught us that some moments in history are so important that they echo through time itself. Today, when humanity chose to stand with their former enemies against impossible odds, you changed everything. The future remembered. Elena looked around at the magnificent fleet that had appeared to save Earth. Ships that carried the dreams of humanity 3 centuries hence, crewed by the descendants of people who hadn't even been born yet, all because a handful of humans had chosen to do the right thing when the universe was watching. The Zarketh threat ends today, Admiral Chen announced. Our fleet will pursue their retreating forces to the edge of the galaxy. They will not trouble the peaceful species again. What about us? Admiral Morrison asked. What happens to our timeline? Your timeline continues exactly as it should, Admiral. But now it continues with the knowledge that humanity has allies among the stars, and that our children will remember the courage you showed today. Elena watched as the future human fleet began to fade, their mission completed. But before they vanished entirely, Captain Reeves' voice came through one last time. Commander Vasquez, your daughter grows up to be quite remarkable. She becomes a diplomat who helps forge the alliance between humanity and the Cathara. Tell her that her mother's courage echoes through the centuries. As the temporal fleet disappeared back into the time stream, Elena found herself alone in space with her surviving pilots, staring at Earth hanging peaceful and safe below them. The immediate threat was over, but she realized that the real story was just beginning. The Cathara had forgiven humanity once. Now together, they would build a future that would make the galaxy remember why that forgiveness had been the most important decision in galactic history. 5 years had passed since the Battle of Earth, and the galaxy had transformed in ways that defied prediction. Captain Elena Vasquez, now Admiral Vasquez, stood on the observation deck of the new joint human Cathara station orbiting Earth. The structure was a marvel of combined engineering. Its graceful Cathara curves integrated seamlessly with human industrial efficiency. Through the massive viewport, she watched ships from dozens of species dock at the trading platforms below. The station had become the unofficial capital of what the galaxy now called the Terra-Keth Alliance, a partnership that had grown far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. Admiral, came a voice behind her. Elena turned to see Ambassador Velthara approaching. Her pearl-like skin shimmering with patterns Elena had learned indicated deep contentment. 5 years of working together had taught humans to read Cathara emotions almost as well as their own. Ambassador, Elena replied with a smile. How did the council session go? Velthara's form displayed what Elena recognized as amusement. The Galactic Council has formally recognized the Terra-Keth Alliance as a major power. The vote was unanimous, which has never happened in recorded galactic history. Elena nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. The success felt almost surreal when she remembered those desperate moments 5 years ago, when humanity faced extinction in the cold vacuum of space. The transformation from near enemies to the closest allies in the galaxy had been remarkable to witness. There's something else, Velthara continued. The hegemony of Salth has requested admission to our alliance. That makes 47 species who have joined us in the past 2 years. The implications were staggering. When humanity and the Cathara had first announced their formal alliance, most galactic powers had dismissed it as a temporary arrangement between a primitive species and an aging civilization. Now, nearly half, the known galaxy had sought membership in what had become the most powerful political entity in local space. What changed their minds? Elena asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. Velthara moved to stand beside her at the viewport. The same thing that has impressed every species we encounter, Admiral. They have never seen 2 civilizations fight so hard to protect each other. The Salth delegation specifically mentioned the memorial gardens as the moment they realized our alliance was different. Elena's gaze drifted toward Earth, where the memorial gardens covered nearly 1,000 acres in what had once been Central Park. The memorial honored both human and Cathara lives lost in the battle, with no distinction between species. At its center stood a statue depicting a human and Cathara reaching toward each other across the void of space. The gardens still surprise visitors, Elena said quietly. They expect separate memorials, separate ceremonies. The idea that we grieve together, that we consider each other's losses to be our own losses, challenges everything they think they know about interspecies relations. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. The holographic display activated, showing the face of Dr. Maria Santos. Elena's former pilot who had become one of Earth's leading xenobiologists. "Admiral, we have a situation developing in the Kepler sector. The research station there is reporting that the local population is requesting emergency assistance. Some kind of plague is spreading through their colonies." Elena frowned. The Kepler sector was on the edge of Alliance space, populated by a species called the Vrex, who had maintained strict neutrality in galactic affairs for centuries. They had never requested outside help before. "What kind of plague, Doctor?" "Unknown origin, but it's attacking their nervous systems. Mortality rate is approaching 60%. Admiral, they're specifically asking for the Alliance because they've heard about our medical cooperation programs." Elena exchanged glances with Velthara. The Terraketh Medical Exchange had produced breakthrough treatments for diseases that had plagued both species for millennia. Human creativity combined with Cathara precision had created a medical revolution that was beginning to spread throughout Alliance space. "How long do we have?" Elena asked. "Based on the spread rate, the entire Vrex population will be infected within 6 weeks. We're talking about the potential extinction of a species that has existed for over 1,000,000 years." Elena made the decision immediately. "Prepare the medical fleet. I want our best human Cathara teams ready for deployment within 12 hours. "Admiral," Velthara interjected, "I should inform you that the Vrex have been historically hostile to both our species. They consider us to be dangerous expansionists. There is a significant possibility that this is a trap." Elena considered this. The Vrex had indeed been suspicious of the Alliance, viewing their rapid growth as a potential threat. But the desperation in the message had seemed genuine, and Elena had learned to trust her instincts about these things. "Ambassador, 5 years ago we were shooting at each other. Now we're family. Maybe it's time to extend that family a bit further." The joint medical fleet that departed Earth 2 days later was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human hospital ships worked alongside Cathara medical vessels. Their crews integrated so completely that observers couldn't tell where one species' contribution ended and another's began. Admiral Elena Vasquez commanded the mission from the bridge of the UES Healing Hands, a hospital ship that had been designed from the ground up as a joint venture. Her crew consisted of both humans and Cathara, working with the seamless coordination that had become the hallmark of Alliance operations. As they approached the Vrex system, the scope of the crisis became clear. The usually pristine orbital installations around Vrex Prime showed signs of abandonment. Ships drifted powerless in space, their crews presumably dead or dying. "Admiral," reported Commander Park, now Elena's chief medical officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the planet's surface. It's weak but definitely Vrex origin. Put it through." The image that appeared on the main screen was heartbreaking. A Vrex official, their normally proud insectoid features ravaged by disease, spoke in halting standard. "Alliance ships, we know we have no right to ask. We have spoken against you, called you dangerous. But our children are dying, our civilization is ending, please, help us." Elena felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she had experienced 5 years ago when faced with the choice between safety and doing what was right. "This is Admiral Vasquez of the Terraketh Alliance. We're here to help. Prepare your facilities to receive our medical teams." The Vrex official's compound eyes widened in disbelief. You came. Despite our hostility, despite our rejection of your alliance, you came to save us." "That's what allies do," Elena replied simply, "even for people who aren't allies yet." Over the following weeks, human and Cathara medical teams worked around the clock to combat the plague. Human ingenuity identified the pathogen's weakness, while Cathara precision created treatments that targeted the disease without harming Vrex physiology. The breakthrough came when Dr. Santos realized that the plague was actually an artificial bioweapon, designed by an unknown aggressor to target the Vrex specifically. The discovery led to a targeted cure that not only saved the dying population, but made them immune to future attacks. As Elena watched the last Vrex patient receive treatment, she realized that something fundamental had shifted in the galaxy. Word of the Alliance's humanitarian mission was spreading to every corner of known space, carried by traders and diplomats. who had witnessed the impossible sight of two former enemies working together to save a third species that had never shown them anything but hostility. "Admiral," Velthera joined her in the medical bay, "the Vrex Council has requested a formal meeting. They wish to discuss joining the Alliance." Elena wasn't surprised. What she had learned over the past 5 years was that the galaxy was hungry for something it had never seen before, a partnership based on genuine mutual respect rather than fear or exploitation. "How many requests are we up to now?" Elena asked. 73 species have formally requested admission. The Council is having difficulty processing them all. Velthara paused, her form shimmering with what Elena had learned was deep thoughtfulness. "Admiral, what we have built here is unprecedented in galactic history. An alliance that grows stronger through inclusion rather than conquest, that extends help to enemies, that sees diversity as strength rather than weakness." Elena watched through the viewport as human and Cathara medical personnel worked alongside grateful Vrex doctors, their different physiologies and technologies creating solutions that none could have achieved alone. 5 years ago, we almost destroyed each other through fear and misunderstanding," Elena said. "Now we're building something that could change the galaxy forever. All because your people chose to forgive us when you had every right to seek revenge." Velthara's response carried the weight of prophecy. "And all because your people chose to stand with us when you had every reason to protect only yourselves. The galaxy will remember this moment, Admiral, not as the day the Terraketh Alliance saved the Vrex, but as the day the universe learned what true alliance means." As Elena prepared for the journey home, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were approaching something greater than anyone had imagined. The alliance was becoming something unprecedented, a galactic community built on the principle. 20 years had passed since the Battle of Earth, and Admiral Elena Vasquez stood before the Grand Assembly of the Galactic Commonwealth, the governing body that had evolved from the Terraketh Alliance. The massive chamber on New Geneva Station housed representatives from over 300 species, all united under principles that had seemed impossible just 2 decades ago. Today was special. Today they would vote on the proposal that would define the galaxy's future for millennia to come. "Honored delegates," Elena began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall through translation matrices that rendered her words in hundreds of languages simultaneously. 20 years ago, 2 species almost destroyed each other through fear and misunderstanding. Today we gather as one people, united not by conquest or coercion, but by choice. She paused, looking out at the assembled representatives. Cathara sat beside humans, their pearl-like skin reflecting the chamber lights. Vrex delegates clicked their mandibles in approval. The crystalline Salth representatives chimed in harmonious agreement. Even the gas-based ethereals had sent avatars to participate in this historic moment. "The proposal before us today is simple in concept, but revolutionary in scope," Elena continued. "The establishment of the forgiveness doctrine as the fundamental law of our Commonwealth. The principle that any species, no matter what conflicts they may have had with us in the past, can join our community if they choose peace over conquest, cooperation over domination." The chamber buzzed with discussion as the implications sank in. The forgiveness doctrine would officially open Commonwealth membership to former enemies, including species that had fought bitter wars against current members. Ambassador Velthera, now the Commonwealth's chief diplomat, rose from her seat. After 20 years of friendship, Elena could read the complex emotions shimmering across her features like an old friend reading facial expressions. "Admiral Vasquez speaks of simple concepts," Velthara said, her melodic voice carrying easily through the hall. "But let us not forget that simple concepts often require the greatest courage to implement. When my people first encountered humanity, we could have chosen destruction over dialogue. When humanity faced our diplomatic mission, they could have chosen safety over sacrifice." She gestured toward the memorial wall that dominated one side of the chamber, where the names of every being who had died in the Battle of Earth were inscribed in letters that seemed to glow with inner light. "These names remind us that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the choice to transform conflict into cooperation. The forgiveness doctrine asks us to extend that same choice to every species in the galaxy." The debate that followed was passionate but civilized, as debates in the Commonwealth always were. Representatives spoke of practical concerns, historical grievances, and the challenges of integrating vastly different cultures. But underneath it all, Elena sensed something that had not existed in galactic politics before their alliance: genuine hope. The Thraxian delegate, representing a species that had been at war with the Cathara for over a century before joining the Commonwealth 5 years ago, spoke with particular passion. "My people were taught that the Cathara were our eternal enemies," the insectoid being said, its translated voice carrying unexpected emotion. "We fought 17 wars over territorial disputes that seem trivial now. When the Commonwealth first offered us membership, many of my people called it a trap or a sign of weakness." The delegate paused, its compound eyes reflecting the chamber lights. "But we have learned what the Admiral and Ambassador discovered 20 years ago, that former enemies can become family, that forgiveness is not weakness but the strongest foundation upon which to build the future." Elena felt a familiar tightness in her throat as she listened to species after species speak about transformation, about choosing hope over fear, about building something greater than the sum of its parts. The voting process took 3 hours, with each species casting their decision through the quantum encrypted systems that ensured absolute security and transparency. When the final tally appeared on the central display, a silence fell over the chamber that seemed to stretch across the galaxy itself. 307 species voted in favor of the forgiveness doctrine. 0 voted against. 17 abstained, citing their need to consult with their home governments. The chamber erupted in a celebration that transcended species barriers. Elena watched as beings who had been mortal enemies decades ago embraced each other with genuine joy. She thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. From those desperate minutes in space when humanity faced extinction, to this day when the galaxy formally committed to making forgiveness the cornerstone of interstellar civilization. Soft touch on her shoulder made her turn. Velthara stood beside her, her features displaying the complex emotional pattern that Elena had learned, meant deep satisfaction, mixed with anticipation of greater things to come. "Admiral," Velthara said quietly, "do you realize what we have accomplished today?" Elena looked around the chamber at the celebration continuing around them. "We've formalized what we've been doing all along, giving everyone a chance to be better than they were." "More than that," Velthara replied. "We have created the first truly universal galactic government in recorded history, not built on conquest or intimidation, but on voluntary association and mutual forgiveness. The implications will echo through time itself." Elena nodded, remembering the temporal fleet that had appeared 20 years ago. The future humans who saved Earth mentioned that our actions created ripples through time. "I wonder if this is what they saw." "Perhaps," Velthara mused, "but I prefer to think that the future is not predetermined. We are creating it moment by moment, choice by choice, and today 300 species chose to build something unprecedented." As if summoned by their conversation, a new figure approached them through the crowd. Elena turned to see a young woman in Commonwealth uniform, her dark hair and determined expression achingly familiar. "Admiral Vasquez, Ambassador Velthara," the woman said, saluting with crisp precision. "Captain Sofia Vasquez reporting for duty. I've been assigned as liaison for the new Deep Space Exploration Initiative." Elena's heart swelled with pride as she looked at her daughter, now grown into the remarkable diplomat that the future humans had promised she would become. Sophia had spent her career building bridges between species, carrying on the work that had started in the desperate moments of the Battle of Earth. "Captain," Elena said formally, though her eyes sparkled with maternal pride, "what's the status of the exploration program?" "We've received volunteer applications from every member species, Admiral. The crews will be completely integrated, with command positions rotating between species based on expertise rather than political considerations. Our first target is the Andromeda Galaxy. If there are other civilizations out there, we want to meet them as friends rather than conquerors." Elena smiled at the ambition of it. 20 years ago, humanity had barely mastered travel within their own solar system. Now they were preparing to carry the Commonwealth's message of peace and cooperation to other galaxies entirely. "Admiral," Velthara said, her voice carrying a note of ceremony, "there is one more announcement that must be made today." The ambassador moved to the central podium, and the chamber gradually quieted as delegates realized something significant was happening. "Citizens of the Commonwealth," Velthara began, Today we have voted to make forgiveness the foundation of our civilization. But there is a deeper truth that must be spoken. The Commonwealth exists because 20 years ago, one species chose to sacrifice themselves for another they barely knew. Because another species chose to forgive an unprovoked attack.
Because both species decided that the future mattered more than the past. She paused.
Her form shimmering with patterns Elena had never seen before. Therefore, by unanimous consent of the Grand Assembly, we hereby designate this day as Forgiveness Day, to be celebrated throughout the Commonwealth in perpetual memory of the choice that made our civilization possible. And we establish the Elena Vasquez Memorial, scholarship for young beings from any species who wish to dedicate their lives to turning enemies into allies. Elena felt tears streaming down her cheeks as the chamber erupted in applause that seemed to shake the station itself. Through the massive viewport, she could see ships from hundreds of worlds, their crews working together to build a future that would have seemed impossible when she was a young fighter pilot facing extinction in the cold vacuum of space. As the celebration continued around her, Elena realized that they had achieved something truly unprecedented in galactic history. They had proven that forgiveness was not just a moral choice, but the most practical foundation for building a civilization that could endure across time itself. The Cathara had forgiven humanity once, and in return, humanity had helped them build a galaxy where forgiveness was stronger than fear, where former enemies became family, and where the universe itself would remember their names with gratitude. The future stretched before them, bright with infinite possibility.